Best
Greg,
time of the
Eric.
week.
I
Best
figured you
time of the
might
week.
be.
I'm trying to get into Twitch.
Okay, that's good.
I'm on YouTube here. Seems to be working. So cool.
That is the coolest. Well, so how's everyone doing tonight? Fine.
All right.
Pretty.
Yeah, I can't complain. I'm doing okay too. Well, I guess we can start.
I'm good.
We can start. Oh, hey Dave, nice to have you here.
Yeah.
I guess we can start with like our hobby happening section. We'll talk a little bit about that, but then I think we'll pretty quickly get into the episode of the podcast. Yeah. So I guess this week most of my efforts have been spent converting another Iron Snake Space Marine. And kind of really the main reason I was doing this was to have some content to post for the 28th of the month, I guess being today, for the Inc. 28 initiative that I guess Commissar Molotov started quite a while ago now. But I wanted to post something for that, and I thought it would also be a good way to expand the Iron Snakes that I've been working on, the one that I recently painted, and this would be another excuse to make a smaller bolter for a Space Marine. So that's what I worked on. There's not too much in the way of conversions on the model, aside from modifying the leg armor and then converting a smaller bolter that actually has most of the functioning aspects that normal bolters tend not to have, like a stock and the iron sights.
I feel it's cool to see you making another Marine, just to go with sort of the other Iron Snake that you finished, and keep making those different bolters.
No, yeah, they're kind of fun to make. And I mean, this one started off sort of as just an experiment to see. I remember a few years ago when the Primaris Reaver Space Marines came out. Those were, I think, the first models to have what they Games Workshop called heavy bolt pistols. And I remember when I first saw them, the first thing that I thought of was, hey, you know what, that overly large bolt pistol might work well as the foundation of more like a full-scale bolt, like a rifle, a bolter. And so that's what this was sort of born out of. I took one of those, cut it down a little, added a rail, sights, extended the barrel, and then added a stock. And the funny thing is, since I've been looking at it and working on it for so long, like now I almost feel that it's too big, despite the fact that it's actually pretty small, at least compared to what you would normally see.
Yeah, well, I feel by adding stuff like the stock and lengthening the barrel, things like that, it ends up making them a lot bigger, I guess.
Yeah.
Whereas, because Games Workshop normal thing, so much of what adds bulk or length to a rifle isn't even there.
Yeah, there being no stock.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know. I'm happy with the model. I still have a bunch of work that I need to do on the model. I have to finish up some armor modifications and then add his different like combat webbing, his sidearm, stuff like that. But overall, he's approaching completion. So that's what I've been doing. I know, Eric, you've largely been focusing on that real grade Evangelion, correct?
Yeah, no, it's true. I finally finished that. and we recently put a post up on our blog talking sort of about it, primarily just showing some pictures of it, and also some of the decals, talking a little bit about putting on decals because I hadn't really done that
Yeah.
before to a major degree. And this, yeah, it was cool to experiment with decals.
No,
And
yeah, they look
since
really nice. I think they add a lot of interesting detail to the model. And I know for this model in particular, a lot of it was there was a lot of color separation in the individual parts, and that goes a long way with kind of improving the model. But then for the Evangelions and most Gundam models and stuff like that as well,
yeah,
there are a lot of other little tiny like words and other warning signs that can really add a lot of depth to a model.
mm-hmm.
And so, Eric, I think all of the little decals and stuff that you spent time adding really help.
No, yeah, it's true. It's true.
But it still looks great without them. You don't need them, but if you have them, it looks good.
Yeah, no, I've been pretty surprised at how good this real grade kit looks. I mean, some of the other ones they used, I was still really impressed with all the color separation and whatnot. But I think this is even better than some of the others that I built.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are so many like little. Well, I guess since this is one of the real grade models, like for a lot of those, they try and focus on adding details that sort of add to like believability and realism. And I sort of think with like a lot of these like larger mecha and robots and stuff, you could sort of imagine there being a lot of like warning signs and stuff like that all over the different like armor plating. So like because you could imagine people like normal sized people with like cranes and other stuff would probably be attaching that stuff.
The scale of the Ava is 1/144.
Okay.
You all still hear me, everybody?
Yeah, we hear you.
I was trying to go through my phone here, and it could sometimes drop me and such, so I'm going back through the computer.
Okay.
Yeah.
If the computer would crash or something, I could switch back to the phone.
Okay. No, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
No, but the model looks awesome. And I think you added even since you finished the post, I think you added even more.
Yeah, there were like I added 24 additional tiny little decals on the torso that I hadn't added before because there are just so many.
Yeah, like look at those. It looks like little tiny like white writing. It's cool.
Yeah, so there were so many of them. There were 12 on the front and 12 on the back, so it took a little while to do. But yeah, and I think it just adds a nice level of sort of detail. Sharding squid, as for the size, it's about as tall as a Night Titan. I think the post we have has at least one picture of like a little 28 millimeter model beside it. So it's pretty tall, but certainly not the scale of 40K stuff or anything. But
I think Greg, you had said it's probably close to like 144 scale. Yeah.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Or that's usually what the real grade scale is. I mean, maybe they changed it because
I think this is slightly different than that, but
yeah.
I mean, a lot of that I can't really say 140. Any of those scales don't mean a whole lot to me.
No, yeah, yeah.
Well, if you'd see like the little entry plug that's put in the back of the Ava, it's super tiny, so.
Yeah, it is. It's tiny.
Looks like a gas pump. Doesn't it?
The umbilical
That's not
cable
the-
does?
That's the umbilical cable.
Yeah,
The
I'm
power
sorry, I was
cable.
talking about the umbilical cable.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's there too. And there's also, I started to assemble it tonight, but there's like a little launch platform that came with it as well. That I guess I can put decals on that too. So I will do that eventually.
Oh, do you
But-
have decals for that as well?
Yeah, the decals that I got have them, which a lot of them are like caution stripes and stuff like that.
Yeah. Are they huge?
I mean, yeah, they're pretty big.
Okay.
They're pretty big. But so now that I've had all the decals on it, I will probably shortly just put like a matte varnish over the whole thing to sort of protect the decals and remove any shine and that sort of thing associated with some of the decals and stuff like that. But
Wait, Dave says in real life Avas are like around maybe 75 meters tall or 247 feet. So that's really big.
yeah. Yeah, but it's a cool model. Really impressed with it. And
I can't get over the little piece for its eyes. It's like actually the white, almost like lightning bolt eyes are actually molded in white plastic in like a gray piece, so you don't have to add stickers or decals or anything for the eyes. I think that's
yeah,
great.
because I feel a lot of the real grade kits, they have like everything's plastic except like, oh, you put like a sticker on some of the eye pieces or something. It was nice that this, not even that, it's just mold like injected directly in there. So I think, and actually on its arms, the upper part of the arms, there's like a green piece that has some dark gray in it. That was also like a dual injected thing. So I feel it's pretty cool, pretty impressive technology.
No, yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. Do you think you'll assemble any of the other ones?
The other Avas?
Yeah. I think the Unit 0 was... I think you can get Unit 0 right now.
Yeah, I could see assembling them.
The Unit 0 has, if you get like the special edition or whatever they call it, it has that, what do they call it? That huge particle accelerator cannon or whatever they used on the mountaintop. Yeah. And I think it also has like a little targeting apparatus to fit on Unit 1 to use it, so it's cool. I think that's a little more interesting than the like launch platform that Unit 1 comes with.
Yeah, it's still cool though.
No, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I still like it. And I feel it made sense to be released as the first one.
Yeah.
If it was, if they were going to do it. But it'll be interesting to see what some of the other ones have.
Yeah, I don't know if... I know Unit 2, that adds some additional, like, at least one additional weapon. Because the Avas use a few things throughout the series. Aside from, like, the first two kits just come with the little progressive knives and that rifle. But they also had these, like, kind of stupid-looking rocket launchers, too, right?
Yeah, and didn't they, or does Unit 0 come with the other, like, weird energy gun thing?
I didn't think it did, but maybe it does. I
don't know.
I thought it just came with
Well, whatever. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. One of them should come with the Lance of Longinus.
That's true. Well, that'll probably be like a premium Bandai kit.
That's true. They have to have stuff for that.
Yeah, so I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, and if we get one, I could see trying to assemble it again, or build it.
Yeah.
It'll be pretty similar, just different colors and different head and stuff like that.
Yeah, I feel most of them, they differ mainly in just the head.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I guess Unit 0 doesn't have the fins.
I think that's the earlier versions don't have the shoulder fins, but the later ones do, so they give you both.
Yeah, it actually opens up and you can pull out a progressive knife from them.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool.
The decals you got, did they come with decals to give the little knives a shiny finish?
No.
Yeah, because I think they had stickers for that, which...
They do have stickers that...
a little questionable.
I could probably pretty easily just paint some silver on there.
Yeah.
Directly onto the plastic, and if I didn't like it, I could just get it off with ethanol, so it wouldn't be hard.
Yeah. Well, so I don't know, what's the thought, everyone? Do we want to get into the podcast soon?
I feel we could. I don't know if people are listening. I'm trying to record this in a different way, and I want to know if I'm gonna press a button here to play some of the intro to our podcast, and I just am wondering if people can hear it. Yeah, and I just stopped
I heard it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if how it projects to other people.
Dave says he's heard it. He heard it too.
Oh, okay. So it's good that all that stuff works. So probably how I'm going to try to do this is actually play our intro music. So, but yeah, and for this, we're going to be talking about the Grim Dark Film Club sort of Instagram project and whatnot. But I mean, I guess we'll talk about that shortly. So yeah, do people ready then?
Yeah, I'm
ready.
If they are, I'm just gonna start this and then yeah. All right, I messed it up already. I wasn't actually recording anything, so we're gonna start this again, everybody. There's a big button on here flashing that it's not recording, and well, all right, I'm gonna do it again. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Dragged into Turbolasers, a Between the Bolter and Me podcast. This is episode 74, and I'm your host, Eric Wire, and I'm here tonight with my two brothers, Adam Wire.
Hey, everybody.
And Greg Wire.
Hey, everyone.
Well, it's nice to have everybody here, and I'm excited to, be recording another episode of the podcast, and rather than having a guest on here, we're going to talk about sort of an Instagram project that called the Grim Dark Film Club, and it is something that was created by a sculptor and artist who's also on Instagram, who goes by Ben Huss, and he started this sort of initiative just asking people to talk a little bit about some of their inspirations for the hobby, particularly in terms of like talking about a film that they're, interested in, that has been like instrumental in the stuff they do, as well as like a novel or some sort of book, some sort of music as well, or an album, as well as then just an artist or some sort of piece of artwork. And we were fortunate to be asked to take part in it. And rather than just all of us doing it kind of combined as one thing, all three of us kind of gave a selection for each one of those things. And we thought this episode would be a good opportunity to just talk a little bit about some of the things that we selected, and just say a little bit more why we were interested in them, and expand a little bit more on it. But I guess with that said, if you just go on to Instagram at just one word, Grim Dark Film Club, should be easily be able to find it. And for at least the last 3 days, he's put up our various entries, so you can kind of see the stuff there. But as I said, we'll talk about it a little bit here as well.
Well, so the project originally started that Bon Huss on his own Instagram account had the idea with a hashtag, just hashtag Grimdark Film Club, for people to share films that inspired them, and that eventually led to them creating an Instagram account specifically for it. And I guess it was so popular that he felt that it would be a good idea to do its own Instagram account. And at this point, it's featured the suggestions of a whole bunch of neat artists that all of you should go and check out and see the neat work that everyone's suggested.
It's true, and I feel there's lots of cool people have already sort of taken part in this. Some of which we actually have interviewed on this podcast, like the Real Broken Fingers. I believe Majos Bior has been on it. So
The Polysmith.
yeah, so certainly I would say it's worth going there, kind of looking at it. And there's lots of, interesting music you might learn about, or films and things like that. So it's pretty cool. But yeah, as I said, we thought this would be a good opportunity for us to talk a little bit more about some of the things that have, influenced the hobby work and stuff that we've done throughout, the blog and that sort of thing. So I guess with that in mind, maybe it makes sense to just sort of go through each one of us and kind of, talk a little bit about the stuff that we had selected. But,
yeah, no, I don't know. I've been having a hell of a time with getting everything to show up in the stream. But so which do we want to talk about first?
Might as well start with the first one. You, Adam, the most important brother,
I don't know about that.
or the one who started does most of the work initially.
Yeah, so okay. Yeah, so I don't know. I think I have stuff up here on Instagram. But so I guess we can talk first about, so we're going through the things. The first one we can talk about is, I guess, maybe like movies and stuff that have sort of shaped or inspired some of our work. The first one that comes to mind, at least for me, is an animated film called Jin-Roh, the Wolf Brigade. And I think this film, and I feel it sort of speaks to like some of the other films we'll talk about a little later, it kind of it focuses a lot on realism and believability more so than some of, like, say, the ultra-violent stylized stuff that, particularly when I think when a lot of people think of, like, animated films, they think a lot about that. But Jin-Roh...
Also, Jin-Roh it's the work of Mamoru Oshii, so probably a lot of you know him as the director of the 2 animated Ghost in the Shell films. They're probably his most popular work, at least here in the United States. But he created a alternative history project called the Cerberus. I think he called it the Cerberus Project, that is an alternative history World War II where Japan was part of the Allies and Germany occupied Japan. And so Mamoru Oshii likes a lot of political based intrigue and storylines, which you would know if you saw the 2 Ghost in the Shell films. And Jin-Roh was one of the stories that he wrote in this alternative history. He did a few live action films about it too, but this was animated. And it basically tells the story of a special unit in the Japanese police force. And the special unit, they're all decked out in this heavy armor, and they all have German MG42s. So the film puts a lot of detail into the firearms and basically everything in it, trying to add some realism and believability. But the story revolves around one of the members of said police force witnessing a suicide bomber kill themselves, and then he ends up getting in contact with the sister of said suicide bomber because it has affected him. And it goes a lot of different places from there, but it's excellent.
And it's pretty neat that I believe it was completely hand drawn. Like, there wasn't, at least as far as I remember, I don't think there was any like computer aided stuff, because I feel a lot of animated sort of things nowadays have a lot of 3D animation, at least to sort of supplement different scenes and such. And this was completely hand drawn, really, really excellent animation accompanied with just very sort of realistic drawings, which, sort of accentuates all the different details in their armor, their firearms, and all that sort of stuff. So
it could also be said that the story in it kind of runs parallel with the story to the fable Little Red Riding Hood, though the more grim original version of the tale, so it's not particularly happy. As you could imagine, the film isn't particularly happy either.
No.
But it's well worth your time. Something that you get more out of it each time you watch it, or at least I certainly have.
And I feel, Adam, at least years back, I know you painted a few of your like stormtrooper, Imperial Guard stormtrooper models to kind of be reminiscent of
like the dark black armor with the glowing like red spectacle type eyes. No, I feel it's very, very iconic, and they're very menacing, and I think it sort of helps, particularly if you think back to the old Mark Bedford stormtroopers, Imperial Guard stormtroopers. They had these like kind of spectacle eyes, and I always thought that was cool.
So it's a great film, certainly worth seeing, and
track it down.
Yeah, so I guess like we can move on from this, I think, right? Next we're moving into like novels. I feel I only read the novel like a few years ago, but the novel Roadside Picnic, which this novel was then a film. The film Stalker was based on it, And this is like a really, I feel really influential to like a lot of the stuff that I've done. But the book itself was written by two Russian authors, and it sort of
They're
focused.
brothers.
Yeah, they were brothers. That's true. Um, and it focused along the idea of what would happen if, say, maybe like aliens visited Earth and then left Earth, and like if they left just their trash or garbage or whatever was left from their visit, what if humans sort of found that? Like, how would they interact with it? Like, and so this.
Well,
In
if I
this,
can interject there,
you sure can.
one of the things that's I think is neat about it is oftentimes when we read or see a science fiction story about aliens visiting Earth, like we think about the aliens interacting with mankind and maybe trying to learn to talk to one another or fantastic battles and stuff. But
Or
this,
even just that, oh, like Earth is such a valuable thing and they need that planet.
yeah, but
Theirs is
this
destroyed.
is
Or
the aliens landed, and within a few days they left, seemingly because they didn't find anything of interest. And all of the places that they visited, they left some stuff behind, seemingly like trash or debris, which the title of the book, Roadside Picnic, kind of looks to that point, saying, imagine people are having a picnic by a roadside, and once they leave, maybe they leave some things behind, like some napkins or a ripped tablecloth, or maybe some empty cans, like just garbage to the humans. But in this case, the aliens left behind some stuff, but it is stuff that the humans don't understand how it works or what it is. And all of the zones that the aliens had visited and left, they're interesting and weird phenomena that are taking place in those areas. And the governments have cordoned them off and prevent people from going in there. But obviously, people try to smuggle in there and take out whatever they can find there and sell them on the black market. And the book's kind of about that. It follows a few characters, one of which is somebody who tries to sneak in there and take stuff, which they refer to as stalkers. But Adam did mention that a film was loosely based off of this book called Stalker by Tarkovsky, a famous Russian film. It's a great film, but it's extremely long and protracted, and something that you kind of have to be prepared for. It's
Yeah.
very deliberate and slow paced, lots of extremely long shots and scenes, and a bunch of heady dialogue. So it's not something to go into thinking there's going to be a lot of action and stuff. But if you go in prepared for that, it's a very thought provoking movie. But aside from having the basic premise of the novel, the main storyline I feel is fairly different.
Yeah. Well,
I
so
think the whole thing, one of the neatest aspects of it is that in addition to like items or potentially trash that was left behind, there are also seemingly there are like various entities, some of which might even be invisible, that sort of affect different areas and affect like the physics around those areas, but you can't really see them. And how the book is written, it's through the eyes of these various characters, and they don't really explain things to you. They just sort of assume you've been alive there, you've experienced these things, you know what's going on. So as a result, they offhand mention these different anomalies and things, but don't really explain what they are. And then if they show up in the books, like oftentimes you don't actually see them. They're like, oh, they hear a buzzing over there and are sure that this deadly thing must be over there, but you don't really see physical evidence of that in many cases. And the film kind of really builds on this, that all the characters are super terrified of these various anomalies or entities and whatnot. But what the viewer sees is essentially a bunch of people wandering around some grassy ruins, rarely, if ever, really encountering something, but everyone's super terrified and have all these sort of rituals like help them know where to go and like what pathways and such are safe.
It's
And
basically 3 hours of I guess it's three dudes walking around in a field and like ruined warehouses, like being absolutely terrified of what might be there, but you almost never see anything that they're terrified of.
and interestingly, or I guess a few things, we actually my Mordheim 2019 warband was sort of loosely based around this sort of premise that what might happen if there's this longer exposure to Weirdstone or Warpstone. And it was kind of thinking about this book and some of those ideas. And I guess towards that end, the Hideo Kojima, the video game sort of director who created Metal Gear Solid and such, his more recent game, Death Stranding, had to have been influenced from this book because it almost seems like a video game representation of this concept. Some weird sort of event happens and you wander around sort of derelict ruins or landscapes, and or almost invisible stuff is there that everyone's terrified about and
Yeah. Well, I mean, I
they
guess.
always show themselves.
Yeah, so I don't know.
Okay.
It adds a lot of weird, like, psychology and stuff to things. And I think, in general, like, Mordheim 2019, there were a lot of aspects of this that were kind of inspired by this novel and Stalker. And I know
Tears of Envy's notion for the whole event was based around the book.
So yeah, like it's very much worth looking into if you haven't. Both,
Yeah, it's a pretty short read too.
And
Yeah,
but
sorry,
yeah,
Adam, for jumping in and talking
no,
like crazy for the book
it's
you
fine.
selected.
No, I mean it's okay. Like we all have lots of stuff to say, and like I feel like any of my choices could very much have been ones you would chose to. So
all right, read Roadside Picnic, everybody, if you haven't. And I guess the fairly famous video game Stalker,
Shadows of Chernobyl.
yeah, and Call of Pripyat were clearly based on Roadside Picnic.
Yeah. So now we'll move on into like music and an album. And so one of the ones I selected was an album by the Jesus Lizard. In this case, the album Liar. And I feel like
the Jesus Lizard.
Yeah. I don't even remember, when did we first start listening to the Jesus Lizard? Was it when we were in graduate school?
It was
we were in graduate school
in 2009, I guess. Right. It was a little bit before graduate school, and I was reading a book about 1980s American underground music scene, and I was reading about Steve Albini and his band Big Black, and how he
which we'll come back to that.
Yeah, eventually became a music producer, and one of the bands that he loves and recorded a bunch of their albums was the Jesus Lizard. So the Jesus Lizard are a noise rock band that some of the original members were originally in a Texas kind of punk noise band called Scratch Acid. David Yao and David Sims. And I don't remember if Dwayne Dennison, the guitarist, was in Scratch Acid, but it doesn't really matter. But so the Jesus Lizard are a 4-piece band. Dwayne Dennison's the guitarist, Mac McNeely, the drummer, David Sims, the bassist, and then the vocalist, David Yao. and they kind of have a minimalistic style where there's not all sorts of crazy instrumentation, but everything's very regimented and tight knit, kind of angular and muscular. And then the singer David Yao is crazy. Like he had really wild stage antics, like he'd jump around and ride around in the crowd while like yelling and screaming. Um, so the music is very energetic and angry sounding, but and also pretty heavy, but not heavy in the sense of like posturing heavy metal bands yelling death metal growls and stuff.
I
So
feel
like
David Yao's vocals are like they're like legendary. And like some of like the choruses and stuff in some of the different songs on the album are just like they really stick with you.
The first half of the album, like all the songs are really driving, and I almost want to say it's my favorite first side of any record that I've heard. Like the first track, Boilermaker, and then Gladiator. Ah, wow, it's great.
Mm-hmm.
So if you like kind of angry, energetic noise rock sort of stuff, you should really check out the Jesus Lizard. And really, any of their albums are great. Probably their two most loved are Liar, which Adam chose here, and the one before that, Goat, which I think all of their albums are named after 4-letter words.
Yeah. But yeah, they're a cool band.
No, yeah,
Worth listening to.
They're great.
Maybe.
Yeah, like we can move on to like artwork. So for this, like I didn't necessarily pick a particular piece of artwork, but just the artist Yoji Shinkawa, and he's best known for kind of like the character designer or like artist that helps Kojima with Metal Gear Solid, Death Stranding, and stuff like that. And he has, at least to me, was always a very iconic art style that almost has like elements of like sketching, like watercolors, and has kind of a really gritty, rough look to it. And I remember when I first saw a lot of the artwork, I was really drawn to it. I thought it was super cool and evocative, and as like a character designer, he always focuses a lot on sort of like military realism, and for the most part, most of the weapons and like the equipment that you see the characters and stuff carrying are like modern day real things. And so I think Metal Gear Solid, like the first game, was one of the first games that really sort of got me interested in like military, like firearms and stuff. And I remember even in like the games, like you could learn a whole lot about them. And I certainly feel like for a lot of the models and stuff that I make now, and like all the Imperial Guard that I've made, were heavily inspired by a lot of his designs. And like I continuously go back to a lot of his work to kind of just get a sense of like how to put together like combat webbing and like all sorts of stuff. Like, yeah, I just really inspirational to me.
And I think he has an interesting ability to combine details, like as you were saying, the different firearms or equipment and such, but then also sort of leave out a lot of details, and it kind of has sort of a watercolor look to it, in which different elements will be sort of not as distinct, and then it will use kind of different swaths of color. And I think it just makes for a very enjoyable and image that you can kind of sort of imagine sort of what's happening there, and I don't know. Yeah, it's they're cool.
And
Very
like I
distinctive too. Like you can tell a Shinkawa piece when you see it.
Yeah. And like I feel for a lot of the stuff, while he does like use like real weapons and references and stuff, as Eric you were saying, like some of those details are sort of like muddled, and like oftentimes the focus of a lot of the pieces are like focused on maybe the character's face or something like that. So there's more emphasis on like the character itself rather than like the big rifle or whatever he's carrying or they're carrying. And so that's sort of always something that we've tried to do as well. And the models and stuff we're making, we're more interested in the character itself rather than like, oh, he has like a 6-foot bastard sword or some oversized stupid thing like World of Warcraft style stuff. So yeah, I don't know. That's really I've really looked back to that.
It's not ramble. We tend to ramble.
We sure do. So let me
going on to Eric's selections or mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess we're starting with the film, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So the thing I selected was actually a Clint Eastwood film called Unforgiven.
Oh yeah.
And this was something that Clint Eastwood directed himself, and it is a Western, which, Clint Eastwood is fairly well known for his Sierra Leone Man with No Name trilogy, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and A Fistful of Dollars, those sorts of things. And this isn't really a spaghetti Western. It's not as lighthearted and humorous and fun action stuff.
Well, so to jump in quickly, I think Clint started and directed it in, I think, 1991, but my remembrance was that the film was in honor of Sierra Leone, who had recently passed away, but he was the guy who directed the Man with No Name trilogy, so Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Fistful of Dollars for a few dollars more, and this was kind of an homage to him.
And so at the time, like, Clint Eastwood was obviously a fair bit older than he was in the Man with No Name trilogy, and it actually sort of looks at that and almost like tries to deconstruct some of the over romanticized look at the Wild West in some of the spaghetti westerns and other things, and looks at this Clint Eastwood who had been sort of an outlaw gunslinger in his past, but was sort of trying to distance himself from that and have a normal life. But he kind of gets pulled back into the old violence and whatnot. And it's sort of a meditation of how sort of he deals with that, and other characters, how sort of they view him as well. And I guess it kind of goes back to the thing that Adam had mentioned, and we'll probably mention a few times, that it sort of adds realism back to the setting rather than this overly romanticized look at it, and sort of talks about the consequences of living sort of as an outlaw like this, killing a lot of people, and how you can come to terms with that or not.
Yeah, I feel it doesn't glorify violence like some sort of like a lot of I would say probably a lot of Western films, and like they're
films.
Yeah, they're not gunslingers going around spinning their revolvers and doing a whole bunch of sharp shooting and stuff that probably a lot of people could have never done.
Yeah.
So it focuses a lot more on like the characters and how some of that stuff has affected
60-year-old gunslinger that had stopped being an outlaw years ago. He got married, had a few kids, but then his wife died, and some younger dude comes to ask Clint if he wants to go on some final or for some mission to collect a bounty, and he decides that he's going to do this as a final mission to get money for
His
his
family.
children.
Yeah.
And since he's been away from it, he can hardly get on a horse. And the whole cast of characters all have their own problems, that they're not quite what they used to be.
Morgan Freeman's in it.
Yeah.
And Gene Hackman, like it's like the acting is great, and in some sense, it almost reminds me of what I think is cool about Inquisitors and such. Like it's, like Eisenhorn, for example. It starts out he's like this younger Inquisitor, but then
Yeah.
it eventually gets into more, and he's at his young age, he's very principled and sort of hard-lined. But as he gets older, he changes a little bit and realizes things aren't so black and white, and how he deals with that. And I feel this, kind of explores sort of similar territory. Obviously, it's not science fiction or anything like that, but I feel Clint Eastwood in this,
William
I think
Money.
is his name in the film. He seems like he would be a good Inquisitor or something that you could make an Inquisitor about. And so it's
Like
a great
in a
film.
heavy leather jacket with like a pistol or two that he kind of hide. Like, yeah.
So really worth watching if you haven't. I think it's neat to sort of deconstruct kind of the Western genre, and it's
Subvert a bunch of the tropes.
Yeah.
so really good.
Yeah.
All
I
right.
guess with that, maybe move on to the book
Yeah.
aspect.
Yeah,
And
man.
so for this, I selected, I guess, the first book of Gene Wolfe's The Book of the New Sun series of books. And the first one is called The Shadow of the Torturer. And I feel I've talked a little bit about this book in past streams and such, but this is a fantastic fantasy sort of sci-fi work in which that it's following a torturer that was sort of disgraced and is wandering kind of this kingdom trying to I guess it doesn't really matter, but he's a torturer that says he has like a perfect memory, and that he's sort of recounting his life and this interesting tale. And it quickly becomes apparent that this character is an unreliable narrator, and he will say things and then later on will subtly contradict them. And it makes for a really fascinating story that, like, on really face value, you can just sort of read it, take his word for everything. But on subsequent readings, or even just the first reading, if you're kind of critical about it, like, you kind of realize, like, I don't know if he's being completely honest with me here, and like what are his motivations for telling you this story. And interestingly, the author himself, Gene Wolfe, kind of describes it as he is translating this book from this torturer's perspective, and he's trying to translate it using words that are the best approximate, like, English words for what he's talking about, but that they're not going to be perfect. And it ends up using all sorts of kind of archaic and interesting words from different Roman legionary stuff, military stuff, and all of it gives just a very imaginative and evocative read. And at first, at least, I thought, like, oh, he's creating all these interesting words and stuff, but then like looking into it, like all of this stuff is actually real historical things. It's just a lot of it isn't necessarily that well known.
Mm-hmm.
But then, since the author says that they are trying to translate like the best approximate word, that runs pretty deep in the whole thing, such that if the torture talks about a horse, you just assume like, oh, he's just riding a regular horse. But as you read the novels, you get details like, oh, the horse seems to have claws, and they like have like a slightly like reptilian look or whatnot. And because of that, when you read stuff, you, again, as I said, you take it at face value. They'll say like, oh, and he sees a ship off in the distance, and you kind of assume, since most of the stuff seems like, oh, there are swords and not electricity and stuff, you sort of assume like, oh, it's a boat and they have oars and such. But it slowly becomes clear that that's not necessarily the case, and some of them may actually be spaceships. But he doesn't, the narrator doesn't make that explicit for you. I guess I didn't say, but the narrator in it is named Severian. So Severian, as I said, is just not always that honest with you. And since he assumes you know what he's talking about, but you don't necessarily. So like, I feel you could read most of the first book and not even realize it's kind of a science fiction book, because it doesn't necessarily seem that way. So there's just a huge amount of depth to the books, in that you have to kind of second guess what he's telling you because he's not always honest, but also second guess the words he's using because they're to be a translation of stuff, so they're not always what you think they are, but you get. So it's just a very interesting read that you can get a lot out of subsequent readings, but the language in general is very evocative and interesting. And towards that end, it's clear that a lot of Games Workshop names and things almost had to have come from this. Like Zoanthropes and a bunch of other, like Carnifex is like, I guess, as I hadn't known before this, but a Carnifex was like an executioner in like the Roman legionaries. I hadn't realized that before. But then Zoanthropes are these interesting kind of degenerate human beings. And there are just so many interesting ideas that it's just an excellent read.
Maybe this is a little bit of a spoiler, but so like if any of you have seen the film Annihilation, there's a scene, I haven't read the book, I've only seen the film, and maybe the book there's some bear creature that maybe we won't talk about the bear creature because people should watch the film. But that idea was basically lifted directly from the book.
Yeah, Alzabo.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. In some sense, I would say like what's so great about the book in my mind isn't necessarily the story, because like, again, if you read it and just take it straight at face value, it's just kind of a guy wandering around getting into some scrapes and hardships and whatnot. But when you read it and don't take it at face value, there's just so much there and depth that you can explore. And the author never actually defined everything, so people are still kind of trying to interpret things and what they mean. And there was even a kind of like a dictionary that was sort of released, or encyclopedia to go along with the book, that just sort of defines what all these interesting terms are and telling you what, like, historically in our world, what they are, as well as what they kind of are in this world. And I don't know,
We've
it's
talked a lot about.
yeah, I could gush on for a while, but it's worth reading. Lots of things were inspired 40K stuff, and yeah, read it. I guess with
Album.
that, yeah, album. So for
Jawbreaker,
this, yeah,
Whack.
yeah. So Jawbreaker is, I guess, sort of a mid '90s punk band from the Bay Area, California, and all their albums are pretty great. But Bivouac was the one I chose here, and I feel it's perhaps a little bit more experimental, but like all the lyrical content behind all the songs is interesting and relatable, and they're like a punk band, so it's fairly abrasive and
It's
exciting.
a three-piece punk band. I feel they're a good example of showing that to be a good rock band, you don't need a ton of members. You basically need three. You need a guitarist, you need a bassist, you need a drummer, and one of them can sing. And in Jawbreaker, Blake Swarzenbach, I think is his last name. He played guitar and sang. And as Eric said, the band's kind of abrasive punk, and they're still held in very high regard despite not releasing too many albums or being around for very long. And a lot of that, I think, is because of the singer Blake's lyricism. Like, he did a good job of telling stories and whatnot in his music. And a lot of punk would often be like political and like railing against the system. And I feel most of Jawbreaker's stuff was more introspective. Like, Blake was singing about his own personal struggles. So he did sing about some like music scene politics where people were complaining where the band wasn't actually punk, and he said so. There's some of that, of course, or not, of course, necessarily. But Blake has a really raspy vocal style.
You're not punk, and I'm telling everyone.
Bivouac was their second album, and as Eric said, it was more experimental, kind of more expansive, moved a little bit beyond the traditional confines of punk music. Like, the last track on it, the title track, Bivouac, was like 10 minutes long, and kind of a sprawling track with a bunch of guitar feedback thrown in there and some vocal samples from like a documentary, presumably about ants building a bivouac, and him singing about isolation. But the album is tremendous. One of the songs on it, called Parabola, was Jawbreaker's attempt to write a Jesus Lizard song. So we just talked about the Jesus Lizard, their album Blyer. So Jesus Lizard, the bassist David Sims, like, was a big part of that band, and so the song Parabola here has a very prominent bass line in it that's great.
Yes.
Any of Jawbreaker's albums are great. A lot of people, I think, like their album after Bivouac, 24-Hour Revenge Therapy, better, which 24-Hour Revenge Therapy was recorded by Steve Albini, the same gentleman who recorded Liar and most of the Jesus Lizard albums, and the person that did the album that I'm going to talk about. But
Yeah.
anyway, so Jawbreaker is excellent if you like kind of thoughtful punk music.
Well, I guess with that, maybe move on to the artwork, or in this case, I selected a sculptor, or he's primarily known for his sculptures. He's like a Swiss artist, Alberto Giacometti, and he's primarily known for his sculptures, brass sculptures that have a really pronounced and elongated human form, to the point that a lot of these sculptures almost look like they're made out of nails because their arms and legs and torsos are so stretched thin and odd, and they kind of have a, since they're of brass, almost like a eroded look to them. And it just has just a very surreal, interesting look that if you see them in person, like, you really feel obligated to like look at them from all sides and see how it kind of affects the human shape. And there, like, some of the pieces all over, like, there were a few when we went to London for like the even the Pilgrim event and stuff, saw some of his work there. And there's actually a piece here where I am in Baltimore, Maryland, at the art museum there. But yeah, his stuff is just really, really surreal looking. And I feel it almost reminds me, and I kind of said in sort of the little quote from this, that it almost reminds me of like a reflection of the human form in the warp or something to that effect, and how they're, yeah, in there
Stretched and pitted and warped a little bit.
or like some demonic spirit or entity. And yeah, they're just really, really interesting looking exploration of the human form, something that I really hadn't seen before. But it's very iconic, and I think if you see some of his work anywhere, you would recognize it pretty quickly. So yeah, I would encourage people to look at some of Giacometti's work. And yeah, if you are at an art museum anywhere, like, see if you can find some of his stuff.
Yeah, no, I
All
agree.
right. One more set of things to talk about, and they're the things that I chose. Is it film that we start with?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
film.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the film that I chose is a film called Blue Ruin. It's a more recent film, um, kind of a revenge film directed by Jeremy Saulnier, I believe his name is. It was one of his first films, maybe his second film. And as I said, it's a revenge film, but like a lot of revenge films that I can think of, where, like, let's say Taken, for example, with Liam Neeson, where most of the film is about him being cool and kicking the crap and killing people that wronged him or kidnapped his daughter. This is more of a realistic look at, if somebody was trying to get revenge on something, what might actually happen. The story is about, the main character's name's Dwight. He's living on a beach, homeless, in his car, a blue car. The name of the film, Blue Ruin, is talking about his not very nice blue car that he's living out. And you eventually find out that he's living homeless in this car, and has been doing that for a while. And you learn that his parents had been murdered like 20 years earlier. And I guess the shock of that, he ended up being homeless. And at the start of the film, a policewoman comes and tells Dwight that the person that murdered his parents 20 years earlier was being released from prison. And he gets his car working again and drives back to Virginia. I think it was Virginia, to try to kill the person that killed his parents. And interestingly about the film, like, the revenge happens very quickly in the film, and then most of the film is then looking at the ramifications of doing that.
Yeah.
Also, interestingly, the main character is more like you or I. He has no experience with violence or enacting violence on people. So when he tries to do it, he doesn't do a very good job, and everything that happens afterwards goes poorly.
It almost, in some sense, it reminds me a little bit of like a Coen Brothers film in which something is attempted to be done, it's not done that well, and then it's just a series of escalating unfortunate things that happen that spiral out because of that. And I feel it's a little bit like that.
Yeah, very much so. And so the film actually was recommended to me by Jake from Ex Profundus on his Twitter account. Like I think he had for a while had a website where he reviewed films. So I don't think that's active anymore. But he would often on his Ex Profundus Twitter account talk about films that he liked, and he selected or mentioned Blue Ruin, and I watched it and I loved it.
Yeah, I mean it's
Stuck
it's
with
kind
me.
of a depressing film, but yeah, as you said, Greg, it's a nice meditation on kind of the hardship and how this quest for revenge, what it can do to a person, and then even if you go through with it, how it doesn't really solve things, and that
Yeah.
it presents its own problems. And I think interestingly, I think most of the shots in it have like a slight blue filter on them. So it everything is kind of cold and it has this blue. So yeah, it's really worth seeing, although go into it knowing that it's not going to be a happy experience. I feel it's very tense throughout almost every scene,
And
almost painfully
to touch
tense.
upon a theme, this is another example of something that tries to inject some realism into maybe a trope or an idea. That's something that all
Yeah, like
Mhm.
the standard, like sort of like revenge films. Like it's very different
from
from
that.
that.
All right, Blue Ruin, go and see it, everybody.
You know, it's something else.
Who's the next thing's book?
Yep.
Mhm.
I chose was The Crystal World by J.G. Ballard. J.G. Ballard writes a lot of, or has wrote a lot of short stories, a lot of them speculative fiction, though he wrote a number of novels looking at like post-apocalyptic dystopian sort of things where the world got ravaged by some particular thing. One about a drought, one of the books is called The Drowned World, which is about, as you could imagine, like the world flooding. And The Crystal World is in a similar vein, but the story follows a physician who specializes in leprosy going to, I'm pretty sure it's somewhere in Africa, but I forget where
Mhm.
in Africa, to meet up with an old colleague of his that is working at a leper colony treating lepers. So he goes there to help with that. And he finds that the forest there is gradually turning to crystal, like everything's slowly crystallizing from a particular point and expanding outward and turning everything, living things, into shimmering crystal. And the the whole novel ended up inspiring like an Age of Sigmar 28 project that Adam's been doing.
Yeah.
But the whole notion of the novel I found extremely evocative, and it was one that I kept thinking about after I read it and continually came back to. Um, it doesn't spoil too much to say that most people who came in contact with this crystal world and whom were able to escape from it eventually end up being drawn back to the crystal forest to kind of face their oblivion. And I mentioned this earlier, but the film Annihilation, which was based on the book Annihilation, which I didn't read that book. Shame on me. But the film Annihilation to me feels like it took some pretty heavy inspiration from the Crystal World, because one of the main themes of it is, well, the name Annihilation, about everything being enveloped by the particular entity in Annihilation and facing
Yeah, and
Annihilation.
it just slowly getting larger and incorporating everything. And I think I had read that the director specifically wanted to kind of call up images of a crystal world. So I think that isn't the book itself isn't as direct to it, but certainly the film,
When
there are
I
a lot of scenes and such that
when
were
I saw Annihilation for the first time, which not too long ago, admittedly, like I was astounded by the themes and parts of it that felt so much like J.G. Ballard's The Crystal World. And one
yeah,
thing
and that it was
that was disappointing in the novel, or the book rather, the book okay, I misspoke again. The film Annihilation, it kind of ends on a happy note where they kind of prevent the spread of this annihilation. And that felt like a cheap cop out to me. So, as you could probably imagine, the Crystal World, there is no happy ending. I mean, it doesn't come out and tell you that the whole world turned to crystal and everybody died, but like you get the sense that that's probably what.
yeah, of that creeping oblivion.
Yeah, but like the
But it's not it,
return to it in like kind of a longing and wanting to. So I mean, it's really cool, and the imagery in it, the writing style is sublime.
yeah, no,
Very.
it's a good read, and
I need
yeah,
to.
sort of like an interesting look at sort of this post-apocalyptic sort of thing, which admittedly Roadside Picnic is sort of like another examination of
Yeah.
things of that nature. So
I need to get back to making some more Age of Sigmar crystallizing models. I should make
yeah, no,
some
that
more.
would be cool.
And paint the orc that I had made like that. Need to do it.
That's one thing that could say if people don't have time to read the Crystal World. Before J.G. Ballard wrote the Crystal World, he wrote a short story called The Illuminated Man, and that ended up being the inspiration to write the novel The Crystal World. And The Illuminated Man kind of has most of the same themes and story points, but in a short story. So you could read that first, but you should read The Crystal World as well. All right, moving on to music. So my pick is an album by the punk band Big Black, and it's a project by Steve Albini, which I've told you,
We've
or I've
talked
mentioned.
about this multiple times already.
He's a fairly well-known producer who records music for bands out of Chicago. His studio is called Electrical Audio, and he's recorded tons of bands, like well-known bands. Nirvana's In Utero, he recorded some of the early Pixies albums, but lots of stuff. And he's well known for trying to capture the band performing live. So not a ton of like overdubs, like he wants to record bands live. But anyway, before he started recording stuff, he started a punk band called Big Black. And I want to say that, well, he referred to it as punk. I think a lot of people would now refer to it as like early industrial. So the band Big Black didn't have a drummer. He had a drum machine. So most, or like all the songs are kind of structured around a monolithic pounding drum beat from this drum machine. And then the guitar sound in the band is unlike any I've really heard before. He used to play with steel guitar picks to get this very abrasive, interesting guitar tone out of it. And Steve didn't really sing. He'd kind of yell about everything. And often a lot of the subject matter was kind of trying to provoke people, but
Mhm.
not quite in the Cannibal Corpse death metal sort of way, but more like one of his songs, not on this album, songs about fucking, but their first album is called Cables, and it's about how when he was younger, he used to go to a cattle slaughtering plant and watch cows be killed, like a captive bolt pistol.
Hmm.
But so they had two albums. Their second, Songs About Fucking, which is the first one that I had heard, they released it shortly after the band broke up, and they broke up because Steve thought they were starting to become too popular. And as you could imagine, that was not actually all that popular.
Yeah, yeah.
But like the Jesus Lizard, I would say Big Black are an example of a band that is very heavy, but not heavy like you would imagine heavy metal, where there's crazy guitar solos or everything's dropped down, like down tuned, and everybody's doing some guttural growls and stuff. It's not that. It's more kind of on the industrial metal side of things. But again, I wouldn't really say it's metal. And I think they were instrumental for industrial music, and like Kurt Cobain loved Big Black. He loved the Jesus Lizard as well. So the Jesus Lizard and Nirvana toured for a while, and Kurt wanted to open for the Jesus Lizard, but obviously the record labels wouldn't have that.
Yeah.
So everybody, if you have an interest in drum machine driven abrasive guitar rock, you should really look into Big Black. Anything of theirs is great.
Agreed.
And so, yes, for an artist, this is more a newer discovery. Maybe Adam, you and I discovered him, I want to say 2 years ago or something.
Yeah.
Joe Keinberger. So we discovered him in that he did a bunch of artwork for a record label called Cadabra Records. And what Cadabra Records specializes in is doing spoken word recording or readings of short stories. So a lot of H.P. Lovecraft short stories and some Edgar Allan Poe things. Or so Cadabra Records does readings of those stories and then has music that was composed to accompany them. And Joe Keinberger has done a bunch of artwork for some of their work, and we actually met him briefly at a little show, an art show of his in Philadelphia, where he was showing some of his work for A Color Out of Space, which is an H.P. Lovecraft story about some meteor crashing into a whale in some New England town and some color alien entity messing things up.
Kind of
But so
like
Keinberger,
Mordheim.
yeah, a lot like Mordheim. And there's a fairly new film representation of that story with Nicolas Cage that I've heard is fairly good, but I haven't watched yet. But anyway, that's getting off topic. So Joe Keinberger does a bunch of creepy, interesting art of hobgoblins and witches and like pumpkin spirits and
Imps
whatnot.
and
imps, and he does a good job of taking like folklore and myth and kind of, I feel like, New England folklore sort of stuff, and making artwork based on that. Um, and while having a bunch of sinister elements, he often will have some kind of cheery, humorous elements too. Like, I am excited for the Halloween time this year, or at least last year. He drew a bunch of images of cute little pumpkin sprites. Like, there was a
Yeah.
vampire pumpkin,
They're
and
cute, but then sort of subtly creepy as well.
yeah,
And in some sense, a lot of this stuff reminds me of, like, various demons and such out of like Pandemonium and like Paradise Lost, but also sort of more interesting demons and spirits and things that you might think of being conjured up from the warp that aren't like as, I don't know, characteristic as like the Nurgle Plague Bearer or the Bloodletter, but more
nuanced.
yeah.
Nuanced and interesting, and not just a representation of, let's just say, violence or pestilence. They're a little bit more interesting than that. And so his work is kind of a combination of watercolor and like splotched paint and some pencil work, and all very characterful.
The
He has
artwork, it also like sort of has a lot of like texture and stuff to it as well. Like if you see the stuff in person, and that I think kind of adds some depth to the different pieces, which I really like.
He has an Instagram account, Joe Keinberger _art. And so everybody should go and follow him. And he sells a lot of the sketch images that he will sell for very reasonable prices. And I'm hoping that he'll paint some more pumpkin creatures.
Yeah.
I want to buy some images of cute, creepy pumpkin creatures.
Yeah, no, really, really nice. And
sometime I should try and sculpt one of the creatures.
yeah, I feel they're just really unsettling. And in a way, some of the color palettes and designs sort of remind me of stuff by like Anna at the Gardens of Hecate.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. Worth checking out, certainly.
Well, so maybe did we?
I think we got through everything.
Yeah, I think we did it. But yeah, so it was fun talking about the stuff. I hope the listeners may have found some films to watch or music to listen to. But in addition to that, I would just really encourage people to look at the Grimdark Film Club on Instagram and just page through all the other artists and people, what has sort of inspired them, because there's lots of great films and things and artwork and artists that you could sort of discover through it. And even with that said, like, maybe even contact them about it and submit some of your thoughts, or just put it under the hashtag, because I think it's really cool to see what other artists in this hobby, where they're getting their inspiration and some of their ideas from, particularly if it's not just like, oh, I read the New Black Library book and that inspired me to make this or that, but if it's more broad or different, diverse literature or novels and such that don't directly relate back to this. And then the same thing with music, what sort of soundscapes and such kind of might go well with sort of some of the games you could play, or help you sort of come to the next narrative arc in a series of games or whatnot. So I think, yeah, it's just worth being able to immerse yourself more in other forms of media that could also be helpful for your own creative endeavors.
Yeah, I mean, we draw stuff from everywhere, like everyone does. And I think sometimes it's kind of neat to go back and sort of examine some of those influences, and talking about them, I think, is good, and it can sort of like push stuff forward and like potentially expose others to some of the things like you're thinking about or others think about. So I think all of that is a very positive thing.
Yeah. All right. So everybody, get out there, watch more movies, listen to more music, absorb more artwork, and then do more artwork.
Read more books too. Yeah, all of that. I need to read more books.
No, yeah, I feel we all could use to do a little more of all this. But yeah, as I said, I hope this was fun and you have some additional things to look at. Maybe read the Book of the New Sun for the third time or something. But yeah, so I guess with that, everybody, thanks for listening. And yeah, I guess we hope to talk to you again soon. And just if you have any thoughts or suggestions or things you'd like to hear us talk about in the future, you can certainly let us know on Instagram or even commenting on the YouTube videos or something. But yeah, with that, thanks everybody. And yeah, over and out.
All right, well, I think that went pretty well. The only thing that didn't go well is Streamlabs. Like, oh my god. So horrible. I need to use a different browser or something.
Yeah, you should just try to see if Internet Explorer, Edge, or whatever it is, or even Firefox or something, just see if that works. Because yeah, it's
so miserable. Like, nothing works. Like you changed one thing and it stops working. Like I don't know what happened. Like, oh
yeah,
God.
I mean, did you? I think you may have said it before, but you had tried to remove it, right?
Yes.
And then add it, and it still does it.
Yeah. I don't know what the deal is, but it's so bad. And then like there's no rhymer. Like you just have to switch back and forth between different things. And oh my God. I hate it. Let's see if I'm gonna actually try and click it down and see if.
Yeah, but it's kind of frustrating. Yeah, so sorry everybody if you are watching this on YouTube. Sorry that it will.
Oh my God! So that.
That's Streamlabs, recursive Streamlabs, everybody. But yeah, sorry for all that. That it hopefully in the future we'll get it to be working better. But I suppose probably a lot of people are primarily just listening to this and maybe with a little luck doing some hobby work or painting, assembling stuff, whatever.
Yeah. I thought it's trash. Like I tried to bring up the other. I tried to use Edge, and it's all ruined now.
Okay, well.
So we can't see anything more. We can, I guess, we can bring up the workstation camera. Like, oh.
So friends, I should go to bed.
Yeah. No.
It's been real, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for talking with us about all the stuff that we selected.
Yeah,
it's been fun.
Talk to y'all later. Yeah.
Yeah, see you, Greg.
Oh my God, Streamlabs.
Yeah, wow, did that not work? I wonder if you could like if there's an update to Streamlabs or
I
something,
mean,
or maybe
like I feel it updates like
Okay.
every week.
okay.
I mean, what I found would ended up working. Like, I have this little stream deck you got me to switch between screens. Like, oftentimes, like if I brought up a new window and then click the button to go back to
Mm-hmm.
the one screen, it would often catch the right thing, but like. And so I was just
Yeah, okay.
constantly switching back and forth between different screens to try and get it to capture the right thing.
Yeah, so I assume that was sort of the strobing look that you saw.
Yeah, Dave, that's probably what you saw.
Unsupervised.
I was switching back and forth between different screens trying to get Streamlabs to capture the right thing.
Yeah.
Very annoying. I guess I should have probably looked online to see if this is a common issue.
Yeah, well, it is what it is.
Yeah, I don't know. The capture thing. Well, actually, let me see something. Can we? But then as soon as you bring up like a different browser, it's like it's also kind of annoying. Yeah, I don't know. Oh, wait a minute. Eric, I can't hear you anymore. Can people... Dave, do you still hear me talking? Do you hear Eric talking? Because I can't hear Eric talking anymore.
Army of Necrons.
Eric, I can hear you
army.
again. For like a while, I just couldn't hear anything you were saying. And
Okay.
now I hear you again.
Okay.
Okay, we couldn't hear you for... It just
Okay.
started like maybe a minute ago, and now it's righted itself.
Okay, I'm not sure what that's about, but
Yeah, he can hear you again now.
okay, well, maybe it's internet issues here, I don't know. But yeah, I guess I had just been saying that, asking if anyone has purchased the Indominus box since it was released last week, or this past weekend, but that I feel Games Workshop has now revealed that they're kind of going to be releasing sort of repackaged versions of the game as different sort of starter sets with less stuff, some of which containing terrain. And I feel those are something I feel I would be more likely to buy. But just because, I don't need a whole army of Necrons. I would, although, might be interested to have a few of them, and I don't need that many more Space Marines. So, Adam, you're building Space Marines. Maybe you need Space Marines now.
I might. No. I mean, I have plenty of... I feel I have plenty of Space Marines and shit like that, so like I probably don't really need it.
Yeah.
So apparently I've been looking around a little. Like, I guess Chrome and other apps, like they have something called hardware acceleration in the app, and apparently maybe that
Is causing the issue.
Yeah, and I don't know exactly what that is. Oh wait. But here it says use hardware acceleration unavailable. I have that off. Hmm.
So you have it off, and that's suggesting maybe if you turn it on, it could have a
No,
benefit.
I think it suggests that it should be off.
Hmm. Well, yeah, we'll have to look at that.
Yeah, it's fucking annoying.
Yeah, I realized, Adam, I've and could put it to the general chat. Like, I'm thinking about shortly going on to finally paint that Forge World Arvis lighter little
Oh,
airship
that
thing.
would be great.
And I think I would, since I had experimented with using some decals for the Ava, I feel I would like to add some minor decals to this. And I'm just trying to think of where might be a good source of symbols or things that could be used. And
Okay,
I'd been thinking of trying to even find some Gundam ones from like the Universal Century line, just and use. I mean, I wouldn't want anything super overtly Gundam, but
yeah.
I found some from like a Zaku from the one like Thunderbolt series or manga, but I realized most of those decals are white. And I was thinking of essentially painting this model white.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that would really work.
Yeah, that's
Although
true.
they make a version of the decals that they're like metallic decals, such that rather than white, they're silver. So I mean, I could
That
potentially
might
still,
work. It
but
still
it's
might be a
still,
little hard to see.
yeah. So I might need to find other things. So yeah, I don't know, but I feel I would like to do at least a little, nothing too elaborate, but I think it would be nice to use some. Adam, do you? Oh, I guess actually, maybe we should mention. We've talked a little bit about it in the past, though, but that charity raffle that Alexander Winberg from Echoes of
Mm-hmm.
Imperium has put up with a bunch of other artists, including ourselves, for Miniatures Without Borders, that's raising money for Doctors Without Borders. That's gonna end the end of this month. So it's something people could consider if you haven't yet or have some money that um, you could, buy a couple tickets or so, maybe win some models we created or something that some other great hobbyists have created. So I think certainly worth putting a little money that way because it's going towards a good cause, particularly with the pandemic that's still going on. Like the more
Yeah.
funding to help those in need for kind of medical related things, I think is certainly a noble thing.
No, certainly. Oh, yeah. When does it end? It's like very soon, right?
I think just it ends on the 31st of July, so that's
Okay, so yeah, pretty
soon.
soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know if we have too much more that we need to talk about. I guess as you can see from the working camera, here are the different components of the Space Marine that I'm working on that we posted on Instagram. I still have a lot of work that I have to do on the model, but I've now
Cool to see you making Space Marines cool again.
yeah, like I feel it's kind of fun to go back and do stuff with them because like I feel it's been a long time since I've really focused very much at all on Space Marines, but they're fun.
Yeah.
And I think there are a lot of a lot of aspects to at least the official models that can be subtly changed that I think goes a long way with improving the models, or at least making them look more significant and believable than they are.
Agreed.
Dave Eric sent you.
Yeah, I saw it. Thanks, Dave. I'll have to look through some of those decals. But I feel there are lots of potential options.
Actually, Eric, look here. I also found this old little like Rogue Trader adventure model that I had started working on trimming and modifying.
Okay.
I should try and eventually paint him too.
Oh yeah, he's cool.
Yeah,
He's cool.
A lot of these really old, kind of janky looking models, I kind of some of them are strangely endearing.
Yeah, they're fun.
Yeah. Well, so I guess maybe we want to call the stream to an end.
Yeah, I think we
talked about a lot. We've been going on for almost 2 hours now, so.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Well, thanks everyone for coming out and joining us, listening to us ramble on about some of our influences and stuff. For those of you here in the stream, thanks for sort of dealing with some of our technical issues, at least with the imaging display. There's always something. But yeah, I guess thanks everyone. Until next time, have fun, keep on enjoying the hobby, stay safe.
Yep, see you everybody.
Over and out.